G'day everyone, it's Doctor Colin here. It's almost that time of the month. I know what you're thinking, but you know that's not what I meant. Yes, Halloween is soon to be upon us yet again, and all manner of costumes, decorations, and horror movie marathons are kicking into gear, so I thought I should do a little something about the history behind some of the most common elements of this festival. So without further ado, here are 5 Halloween origins. The most popular symbol of Halloween by far has to be the Jackolantern. What says Halloween better than a gourd hollowed out with a face carved into it? But where did this tradition come from? As with most Halloween traditions, the Jackolantern was adapted from Irish custom. During the festival of Samhain, people would take turnips and other root vegetables and carve scary faces into them. These carved faces were meant to frighten away evil spirits when a burning ember was placed inside the vegetable. As the Irish began to emigrate to America, they brought this ancient custom with them, and with a bit of a regional flourish, the turnip became a pumpkin, and the ember became a candle, and the modern jack-o'-lantern was born. But where did the name come from? One story that could explain it is the tale of Stingy Jack. Stingy Jack was a mean-spirited old drunk, who liked nothing more than playing tricks on people. Naturally tiring of pestering the townspeople, the stakes had to be raised to the point where Jack pranked the devil himself. Somehow convincing the devil to climb an apple tree, Jack surrounded the base of the tree with crucifixes, and the devil could not come down until they are removed. In return for this, Jack made the devil promise not to take his soul when he died. The devil complied, and Jack was true to his word. Years later, when Jack died, he reached heaven, but owing to his wicked and mean-spirited life, he was not permitted to enter and was cast into hell. However, the devil stayed true to his promise and refused to take Jack's soul, condemning him to an eternity in limbo. Limbo was a dark and frightening place, and Jack asked the devil for a way out. Unwilling to help this cursed soul too much, the devil gave Jack a burning ember from the hellfires, and so that he didn't scorch his hand, Jack placed it in a turnip that he carried with him. The light of the ember burns forevermore, as Jack's lantern in the gloom of limbo. Halloween is the modernised version of the Gaelic festival Samhain, which signifies the end of the harvest season and ushers in the dark half of the year, when autumn and winter manifest. It is believed it has its roots in pagan rituals, though the holiday we celebrate now is more directly linked to the Christian faith. Many of the traditions around Samhain are similar to Beltane, which is another festival symbolising the transition of seasons. All Hallows Eve became Hallows E'en, and then finally Halloween. The festival of Samhain celebrates a time when the barrier between the world of the living and the dead is weakest. The Eschi were fairy-like creatures, also known as Sith, and were nature spirits. It was believed that they existed in the spirit realm, and during Samhain they were able to more easily cross into the living world. As the dead returned to their homes seeking hospitality, feasts were had with a place set for the dearly departed, while various other traditions were aimed at keeping away evil or mischievous spirits. But more on that later. The day after Halloween is known as All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day, as it began as part of a 3-day Christian religious festival known as All Hallowtide that celebrates the saints, martyrs and lost loved ones. Thus we can see that, much like Easter and Christmas, Halloween is a pagan festival adapted by the Christians and reshaped by marketing into something new and far more secular. Ah yes, trick-or-treating, the number one reason grouchy people hate Halloween, and the number one reason children love it. The premise is simple. Dress up in a costume, walk around to strangers' houses and ask them for sweets. If they don't comply, you pull a trick on them. Kind of like kid-friendly extortion. Given that Halloween, as we've observed, is about honouring the dead and warding off evil spirits, where do costumes and candy come into it? Let's start with soul cakes. Soul cakes are small round cakes that are eaten in remembrance of the dearly departed. Soulers are people, especially children, that go from door to door asking for cakes. This tradition is thought to date back to the Middle Ages. Souling, also known as mumming or guising, even had its own carols that were sung, though I will do you the mercy of not having to listen to me attempt it myself. Obviously, cakes take some time to make, and with the sheer number of children that go looking for delicious foodstuffs on Halloween, there needed to be something more practical and economical. Enter the big bags of candy. It's also thought that not giving treats to people that were guising brought bad luck, and this is likely where the notion of the trick came from. Many believe that the act of giving out sweets to bizarre-looking creatures derived from the belief that the Sith had to be appeased, so that they didn't do awful things to your family. In fact, the Muck Olla was the Celtic god of the dead, and he would personally bring you bad luck if you did not appease his Sith, so it was just safer to give out treats. What about the costumes? In many of these festivals that involve door knocking for treats, a typical tradition is to dress up in costume and either sing or perform an act. Christmas carolers are a good example of this. Halloween costumes though typically tended to be more spooky, and this is likely owing to the fact that the holiday not only represents the deceased visiting their families, but also fairy folk crossing over to pest of the living. Thus it is believed that in the festival of Samhain, the disguises were meant to protect the wearer from the Eshi, who thought they were one of them, as well as receive offerings on their behalf. Guising did not take off in America until the 20th century, and during the 30s and 40s it became known as trick-or-treating. In the early to mid-1940s, the practice was put on hold due to sugar rationing. However, it soon took off again in a big way. In the UK, the tradition holds that simply rocking up to a house in costume didn't ensure a treat. The children were required to perform a party trick, a song, or a joke to entertain and earn the treat. "Alright, you little monsters, I want to see you earn your sweeties, right? Alright, Mr. Blobby, you earned your wine gums. As for you, Wurzel Gummidge, you get blackjacks. Now bugger off, you lot, I'm not Bertie Bassett." Given that the rest of this holiday is dedicated to either ghosts or fairies or dead saints, witches seem a little bit of an odd inclusion. Sure, there's a certain spookiness to someone that is visibly human, but terribly ugly and wicked, but they aren't exactly ethereal. However, given the pagan roots of the traditions, it would only make sense to include the highest ranked practitioner of pagan ritual. The modern image of the witch is based on the Celtic goddess referred to as the crone, who was an old and haggard-looking woman that represented the height of maturity. Her companions were the maiden and the mother. The witch was the one that knew the rituals and the arcane knowledge that the pagans followed, and as Christianity rampaged through places like the United Kingdom, this knowledge was kept secret and passed down within the family through the generations. The magic was seen as an aberration against God and nature, and as a result practitioners were persecuted. The Salem witch trials are a perfect example of the sort of mania that post-Christian mindsets could partake in when exposed to the possibility of pre-Christian knowledge or practices. Of the various rumoured abilities of witches was the ability to commune or converse with supernatural beings or the spirits of the dead. It was a common belief that witches held a black mass that would summon the devil, and they would show their devotion to him with all sorts of bizarre and disturbing acts, including, but not limited to, child sacrifice, nude dancing, and kissing his posterior. The image of witches riding broomsticks and pitchforks is actually symbolic of the carnal relations the witches engage in with the Lord of Darkness, and the notion of them flying is supposedly due to the ingestion of hallucinogens. So all that's missing is rock and roll. Another popular image is the black cat that accompanies the witch. Traditionally, witches had familiars that were animals that helped them commune with spirits. Typical animals included cats, toads, bats, birds, rodents, and weasels. They acted as spirit guides, helping the witches to divine their magic and communicate with the other realm. These supernatural powers, images, and rituals seem perfectly suited to the modern Halloween, and it's little wonder then that the witch makes it into the iconography of the holiday. Given that Halloween is meant to be a holiday celebrating the dead rising from the grave, it seems befitting to talk about ghosts. In Europe, especially in France, it is believed that on All Hallows Eve the dead rise from the graveyards and have a carnival of dancing and merriment known as a danse macabre. Ghost stories go back as far as human history, so how did the icon of the bedsheet ghost take off? If you listen to ghost stories, the apparitions are usually described as pale, green, or transparent versions of their living counterparts, usually dressed in the typical garments they would have worn in life. Sometimes they bear the wounds they died from, or the tools of their restraint, such as shackles or chains. Quite often though, they would be described as being dressed in their winding sheet, as if risen from the very grave as they were buried. A winding sheet was a plain white cloth that was wound or wrapped around a corpse to keep it in a manageable position for burial. The idea that the ghost would be wearing the sheet meant that artistic depictions of ghosts would have a tattered sheet trailing from the spirit's body. The sheet ghost became popular in the 1800s, when the most popular ghost imagery was a spooky knight in armour, or a wailing woman in a dress. Either could be walking around holding their own severed head if it suited them. The modern iteration of the sheet ghost is likely due to the benefit of having a visual shorthand for the concept while not having it be the specific likeness of a person. It also became useful in theatres, as a special effect, as a floating sheet with no visible human form therein was far creepier than a guy in old-fashioned clothes. However, I'm sure there are some fashion choices from the past that would scare the bejesus out of an audience now. So, while the bedsheet ghost may not have much to do with the descriptions we have for actual ghosts, it does create a nifty visual shorthand, and makes costume making that much easier. In fact, it's so popular that even the ghosts in Beetlejuice dressed up in sheets. Well, there you go, 5 origin stories you probably didn't know. Did this put you in the mood for Halloween? Did you learn something new? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I have plenty more to check out on my channel. In fact, I'll put the links to some of them at the end here. You can also follow me on social media where I post all kinds of stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.